I remember Adam from Greyhaven when he gave me like these two black and white starter decks for Magic, like
Mm-hmm.
the free ones that they just give out.
Mm-hmm.
Terror with that art was one of those cards. So looking at that, it's just like, whoa, am I like 12 again? Shit.
Yeah, yeah, for real. For real. I remember when I made the mono black Shirei deck, Terror was my favorite card in that. And you know what? Some things never change. I had the fucking white border and it was amazing. It was beautiful.
Yeah, but the history pack. Oh,
uh
we are live.
we are
I
live now. Yeah, yeah. How's it going,
well,
guys? How's it going?
I
Miles
got a
and
better
Chris.
mic.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not Gris, I am better Mike.
You are better,
And
Mike.
camera.
Who's worse,
Hello.
Mike?
I think that's still me because I don't have a preamp. Um, but we take some and we lose some.
Hey, I mean, it still looks good to me. It's still sounding great. Anyway, yeah,
Excellent.
this Terror. Oh, we were just talking about art. This Terror is probably one of my favorite pieces of art in any card game ever. I love this art.
Yeah,
Um,
just looking at that.
it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Hold
Anyway,
control, zoom in.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I had it at like 25% increase right there. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Anyway, hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Sunday. You're probably going to be listening to this on a Sunday, so happy Sunday, happy draft day.
It's currently a happy Saturday.
It's currently a happy Saturday, soon to be a happy Sunday. Yeah, and I think we're just going to kick it off by starting a little chat about draft, because draft is one of my favorite things to do in any card game. It was definitely like my staple must play in Magic the Gathering. I played a lot more sealed and limited than I did anything else, but I haven't really gotten into the world of Flesh and Blood draft today. We're gonna get me into that world a little bit, so my boy Grizz here is gonna help us out, give us a little walkthrough on Monarch and Welcome to Wraith and kind of the themes and how to draft them.
Yeah, so shout out to Nerd Haven Games, where I'm going to be armoring it up tonight. We're going to be drafting some sets. Hopefully going to be two drafts. Love to do a double draft. And those sets going to be Monarch and Welcome to Wraith. And I figured, yeah, might as well just talk about those sets particularly, as well as just drafting in general with Flesh and Blood a little bit, because, yeah, like Miles said, it is one of the most fun times I've had with any kind of TCG is draft format. Everyone's on a fairly even playing field. It all comes down to lots of little choices you make in the moment. And yeah, so gonna get right into it.
Mm.
Generally something to know, like you think back to drafting in Magic, you open that lightning bolt in pack one, you're probably gonna go red and then
Mm-hmm.
try and branch into another color, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different in Flesh and Blood because you have a hero and then you have a generic card pool that could supplement any hero, as well as, yeah, each hero's individual card pools.
Mm.
Um, so a tip that I have heard and is very helpful,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Uprising, by the way, but in any draft format, is you want to try and stay open if you can near the beginning.
Mm.
So what that means is if I'm drafting Welcome to Wraith and I'm opening it up, pack one, pick one, I don't see anything really standing out for any of the classes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't pull an Ancestral Empowerment or Spinal Crush or Crippling Crush or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I see a red Scar for a Scar or a red Fate for Scene. That I'm gonna windmill slam that
Right.
because that gives me an excellent card that is going to increase my win rate for every matchup,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows me to stay open, so I can read the table a bit before I pick a hero.
Mm.
So is that seeming similar to how you would draft in Magic as well?
To some extent, right? Because like in recent years with Magic the Gathering, if you're drafting, I mean, I can't remember a set Since well before Forgotten Realm, where you could really draft a monocolored deck. Like it's really been about keeping yourself open to versatility,
Mm,
locking yourself into a wedge in the long run, or a two color little slice. But it gives you some versatility because you can say, I found really good red cards in pack one, order shifts. Suddenly I'm being cut on red cards. Somebody to my left is now, going into red. But, maybe blue's open, maybe white's open. You can draft into that. And then there's basically, a possible combination for anything that you go at in that regard. So in Magic, it's really about reading the table and seeing what you're going to be able to draft the best of.
mm,
You can force if you really want to force. But, at the end of the day, a lot of the less experienced players try to force and they don't really realize
mm,
what's been left on the table. So, I mean, in Magic the Gathering, it's always been a thing for me. The most important thing is to read the table. Pick the thing that's being the least played out of the good strategies. Like I'm not just going to pick, the worst tier deck for draft because it's
mm.
open, but I'm going to, look at the top 4 and go, "Hey, out of the top 4, what can I make work within this core color, what can I make work tacked onto that," right? So I think it is kind of similar in that you're drafting, for generic purposes first. You're just grabbing good high value stuff and then you're
Mhm.
looking afterwards for the filler. I don't know if that's the same when you're drafting in Flesh and Blood because it sounds kind of like the quality filler is what you're looking for first. It might be the other way around until you can read what's open at the table.
Well, quick tangent on reading what's open in the table. I remember last draft that we did, we drafted Arcane Rising,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of it, like the last, I'd say 4 to 5 cards for all of us, maybe 3 to 4, we were all literally having to pick Azalea cards because nobody at the table decided to play her, and
Ah,
we all had joked that, like during the first pack, that if one of us just swapped to Azalea, we would be eating good.
right.
But that goes back to reading the table and also having that locked into or forcing a hero or color combination in Magic mindset.
Mm.
And I don't know, that's probably one of the trickiest things for me. Like going into a draft being like, okay, I want to play this hero, and then just passing up really good opportunities.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest things in Magic too is when you've drafted your first pack in a particular color combo and you see something that you could draft but would be difficult to draft. There's a really high
Yeah.
value card. You see it come around and it's like, do I take that and do I see the opportunity or do I go for the consistency of what I already have? And honestly, personally, as somebody who's placed in top 3 in every Magic draft I've played in the last 3 years, I always take that high value card. I always grab it because if I don't grab
Oh,
it, somebody else is going to grab it. And if unless there's a really good pick for my colors in that pack, it's
mm,
more worth it to deny somebody else the opportunity to go into something good than it is
um,
worth it to go into that yourself and try to force that, if that makes sense, or to pass it and hope for something good. And in a certain sense, it's like, well, I'm mostly taking it so that I don't have to play against this because this is a
yeah,
really good card.
I feel you.
Yeah, so that definitely is a big aspect of it for me. And like if somebody passes me, you know, if somebody passes me a removal spell that's not in my colors, if somebody passes me an Oblivion Ring or a Doomblade, I'm taking it. I don't care if I'm in the colors,
Yeah,
unless there's a lightning bolt in the pack. I don't know what set we're talking about here, but unless there's something like a lightning bolt in the pack, which would be, if I'm, for the sake of the example, drafting into red, I'm gonna want that lightning bolt over it. But removal is
yeah.
important for everybody else. I really like creature-based decks and enchantment-based decks, so if I want those to succeed, you've got to say bye to the removal. And sometimes I'll take a little hit on the power level of my deck to make sure that nobody else can interfere with me.
But keyword there, I think, is
Yeah,
sometimes
it
because
is
if you
really an
if you
evaluation
hate draft the
situation.
entire time, then you're bringing everybody else's card quality down slightly, but you're heavily bringing down your own.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're the only everyone else is on an equal playing field except for you,
Hmm.
as opposed to like you said, if you just sometimes take it like, oh, I'm pretty sure the person I'm passing to is playing Bravo, and I just opened a tectonic plating.
Yeah, you're not gonna
I think
pass
I'm gonna
that.
take I think I'm gonna take the tectonic plating just so he can't have it, even though I'm playing Katsu.
Yeah.
because he's just going to windmill slam this entire draft. If he,
Yeah.
yeah, that all things in balance.
Yeah. I think now here's the real question. So if you're playing
Yeah.
Katsu, you've got your pack 2 pick 1, right? You're going to pass to a guy that will just pretend you already know is playing Bravo, right?
Okay.
Say you don't have legendaries, but like you've got a top tier Bravo rare and you've got a top tier
Mhm.
Katsu rare. Which one are you taking?
Katsu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at it just as a numbers game, by taking the Katsu card, I am improving my card quality by X%. Whereas if I take the Bravo card, everybody else at the table could pick something good for them to improve their card quality, whereas I am doing something to actively stop somebody else from improving theirs. And they could be picking literally the same card from the pack that they're opening right now.
Mhm.
So I'm just hurting myself.
Mhm. Jakob says in the chat he would take the tech plating even if the person isn't playing Bravo. So that's why I asked the other question. Like if you've got two equally tied
Yeah,
rares, yeah. Um
yeah, good
yeah,
point.
yeah. And then in the case like for me in Magic, if I'm looking and okay, somebody else is playing Simic, I'm playing I don't know, Orzhov, there's a
Mhm.
B tier rare for me or like an A tier rare for them and I can only pick one of them because of the difference in that whether or not the B tier is going to table, I'm probably going to take away their A tier. I'm probably going to make sure, if I'm looking at B tier picks, that we're
Oh,
all looking at
interesting.
B tier picks.
See,
Because at a
I
certain point, if you're passing an
mm,
A tier pick to somebody that's going to use it and you're taking a B tier pick, you've just limited yourself.
true, but I do think you might not even get map paired against them. So by giving them the better card, like it might not even affect you. This is getting super meta.
It is. But
I,
that's
I,
this
I
is this
say
is how complex drafting is, to be honest. Like,
it's true. It's
mm.
super true. That's why I got really addicted to those auto chess battler games on
Oh yeah,
mobile
oh
for a
yeah,
while back.
yeah.
It's just pure drafting the entire time and trying to read the table and seeing what everybody else has.
Mm-hmm. I play. If you look at my stream history, you'll see I still play a lot of team fight tactics. I love the league auto chess. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But back to
Gold
Flesh
baby.
and Blood a bit.
Yeah.
We've already touched on it. I was going to talk about Monarch first, but let's delve into WTR because we've talked about Katsu, we mentioned Bravo, and I think it's the most straightforward set to draft, and all of the heroes play fairly well. I think Bravo is the easy pick for he's the 5 of the format. He's really, really
Mm.
easy to build.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into what each of the specific heroes want in a sec here, but Bravo is definitely the easiest deck to build. I'd say Dorinthia follows that because you have your main damage dealing source. You have Dawnblade as a token that you always have access to. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have the least experience drafting Katsu, and Reinar, but I play a bunch of Levia, so Reinar is pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Um, so also in the set, there are a couple generics that are important to keep in mind before
Mm-hmm.
we go into the classes. You got Scar for a Scar, which is excellent. It's 4 damage for 1 card, and it costs nothing, so that's a 4 for 0. That's above rate. It's what we want. And then the other 2 sets of cards, well, okay, obviously Sync Below as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a top tier card.
Of course.
But Slogism and Regurgitating Slog
Mm-hmm.
are fantastic if you're playing either Reinhardt or Bravo, because most of your attack actions are going to be costing 2 or greater anyway. So you can pump them and make them real big with the Slogism so they're difficult to block early on. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you get the Regurgitating Slog, go in with Dominate to finish out a game.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an excellent package that you can include in either of those decks, or even Katsu or Dori for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
It just plays best into these two, but it's a great win con. And when you're drafting, it's more important even in a Monarch, but you want to be thinking while you're drafting, what are my win conditions? Because you might have a really great cohesive deck, but if you have no way to actually finish it out and deal the damage, you're
Mm,
not going to go very far.
right.
The other one is Nimblism and Nimble Strike. So where Regurgitating Slog and Slogism focus on a go tall strategy, the Nimblism and Nimble Strike are go wide,
Mm,
being able to boost a low cost attack and then banish the Nimblism from the graveyard to give the Nimble Strike a small attack boost and go again. And that fits great into Dori and Katsu because they both want to have go wide turns where they do a bunch of smaller attacks, and that will just further stretch the opponent's resources.
mm,
Uh, so yeah, the heroes in this set kind of fall into two classes: the tall heroes, Bravo and Reinar, and then the wide heroes, Dori and Katsu.
mm. That's a really good way of breaking it up. And just to kind of flashback to what we were doing before, Blue Snatch is actually a really good rare. Draft that shit. You see that shit, you take that shit. Anyway,
Oh, okay. Oh, if you're playing Katsu.
if you're playing Katsu,
If
it's like yeah,
you're playing
it's an
Katsu.
instant pick. Yeah, I should
If you're playing
qualify. I
Bravo,
should
do
qualify.
not.
Don't if
Yeah,
you're playing Bravo,
please.
do not take Blue Snatch. But
No,
I've seen a lot of videos where people have passed it up, even as Katsu, and I think that is a pretty silly move. I think it's. I'm just gonna slam on
yeah.
the last week. Whoosh. Pay attention.
Excellent callback, sir. But yeah, so for Katsu, your weapon is going to be the harmonized Kodachis. Each of
Hmm.
them will cost one resource to go in for one, and if you have a card for cost 0 in your pitch zone, it has go again.
Mm.
So this means that you want to be drafting a lot of blue 0 cost. So you can just pitch that one card to threaten 2 damage over 2 attacks.
Hmm.
And kind of this might sound kind of basic to anybody who's been playing for a little while, but it's important to note that if you're going to go in for one with 2 separate attacks, if they want to fully block that damage, they need to commit 2 cards to it, as opposed to going in for 2 with 1 attack where they
Hmm.
can just block with 1 card.
Hmm.
And that's really the key to Katsu's strategy is you want to pitch a blue to swing twice with Kodachis and then attack again with something from hand.
Right, right. And it sounds
Um,
like it's a kind of a mix of aggro and tempo. The way that you're trying to balance out, splitting your smaller attacks so that you're demanding more cards if they want to block. It sounds like it is a pretty tempo based deck as well.
because then
Hmm.
you also get some defense reactions like Flick Flack,
Hmm.
which will really help if your opponent is trying to go wide as well with like a smaller swing and then a big one, because it will pump any thing that you block with after that as combo.
Hmm.
And combo can be, to talk about combo, it can be super great in Katsu. And it can be nice if you have the option while you're drafting to focus on a few combo lines so you can really build that up and have that be consistent.
Mm.
And also, Katsu's hero ability will let you discard a card with cost 0 when one of your attack actions hit to tutor up a card with combo. So you can be a little bit more toolboxy in that you have maybe a main combo line that you've drafted, and then you have a few others that
Mm.
you can tutor up with Katsu's ability. But I would say you don't want to focus too much on that. You do want to focus a bit on it because that can really push through the damage, and it can be one of those win cons that we were talking about.
Hmm.
Like you want to draft in those win cons, but because Katsu by just pitching a blue can threaten two separate instances of damage,
Hmm.
it's your win con is inevitability.
Right.
Let's hope that nobody drafts Throne of Brutality. Uh, it actually see in play because it's been banned for since I started playing. But
Hmm.
Throne of Brutality, it's a good card. If you can draft it, you probably should because it can more or less help you not fatigue. And in situations like this, where you have to block 2 separate instances of damage or multiple instances near the end game, that will save you because you can block with it. It'll go to the bottom of your deck, and
Mm.
you might as well have just pitched it to block for 2. And
Right.
that's very old him. And if I know anything, it's if something sounds old him, it's probably pretty good.
Hey, I agree. I agree. That's cool, and
So the other,
it sounds like the ability you really want to again, jumping back to last week, it sounds like if you're going to use the ability, it's really important to know when the time is to strike on that. It's not something you
Absolutely.
want to be using willy-nilly. You want to wait for your opportunity. You want to watch that tempo being taken to a place where they can't recover anymore, and then you want to use that to drive it home.
Absolutely,
Mm.
because I remember when we split a box of Welcome to Wraith,
Mm-hmm.
and then we did like a sealed thing with it, and then we just traded cards back and forth to get the decks that we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I played Katsu, and I found myself using his ability very infrequently because
Mm-hmm.
I would rather just have the consistency of threaten two and then a card, and then an attack with a card from hand by pitching a blue. It it's just better value.
Yeah.
Unless I was going for like an open the center line or something where I could make it big with dominate, and in that case it functioned like a win con.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds kind of like to me, if I had to equate it to another kind of deck, it sounds to me kind of like a Boros aggro kind of strategy from a Magic perspective, where you're kind of using a little bit of controlliness to set up combo lines. You got very distinct lines of play, and it's lots of little chips. It's death by a thousand
Yep.
cuts. Yeah.
It literally that's a perfect way to put it,
Mm,
and that's how I've heard it described before as well. Is
mm,
it's death by a thousand cuts.
mm. More
A
like
harmonized
Katsu, you know what I mean? All right.
myriad of Kodachis.
So for the other go wide strat, then we've got my favorite boy in the entire world, the best boy, perhaps, in the world of Wraith.
Dorinthia.
Well, now I feel mighty awkward.
Hey, at least you don't feel as awkward as Dorinthia sitting there just being like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You personally offended her.
No. Well, yeah.
Fine.
Who's to talk us into our second go wide strat here? Now that we've given
Okay,
Katsu
so
a little look.
Dorinthia isn't quite as go wide as Katsu. The idea of go wide with Dorinthia is two swings with Dawnblade. But what makes her really fun, as any Dorinthia players out there know, is the fact that your mechanic, Reprise, rewards you for your opponent blocking your attacks with cards from hand. And it rewards you by doing things like boosting an attack by 3 as an attack reaction. And when you're trying, okay, so Dawnblade, if you hit twice in one turn, it gets a counter. If you don't hit with it at all during a turn, it loses all its counters. So you're trying to hit twice with it each turn to build it up and just become an unstoppable behemoth
Mm-hmm.
of fencing fury.
Oh yeah.
But and the reprise mechanic just lets you sneak in that damage. It'll make blocks super awkward, and that's why I just hate playing against Warrior. Kasai, I just hate Kasai. She's fantastic. She's not actually broken. I just my brain doesn't like having Miles can attest to this. He'll be like, Chris, I'm playing Pummel. I'll be like, okay, I'll still just block it. Oh.
It's true. It's true.
Oh. That being said, I do have the least experience playing with Dorinthia and Katsu. Uh, but yeah, you just want to draft good cards that let you, like Warrior's Valor, to give your weapon go again,
Hmm.
so you can switch it again. You want to focus on giving it go again, buffing it, and try and look for those attack reactions that can surprise swing the game in your favor.
Right.
Like, I know you always talk about if you're playing Warrior, you only need to play one route because if they see you pitch your route,
Yeah.
they're going to be like shaking in their boots the entire game playing around it because
Hmm.
route, as an attack reaction, it boosts it by +3 attack.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that
+3,
correct?
I believe. Yeah.
And then if they've defended with something from hand, you can return something that they have defended with to their hand.
Which is just huge drive home damage. That's a potential of like 7 extra damage on a swing. It's
Yep. Oh,
absolutely insane.
eight with a actually it could be up to I think red unmovable blocks for 7 or 8 from Arsenal.
Yeah.
So that could put that back to hand. and then 3 more. So that could be a differential of 11.
Hmm.
That's a big number when it's more than half your health.
It is. It really is. Yeah, yeah. So route obviously a must have. If you find it, you better be taking that route. But
Oh, also Dorinthia, refraction bolters.
mhm.
I got to double check to make sure refraction bolters is actually from this
It's
set
in
because I
Welcome to
don't
Wraith.
think.
Don't worry.
Okay, good.
I opened some foils in my first box break. Yeah.
Okay,
Um.
sweet. Yep.
Yeah. Refraction bolters. Really
That's a must if you got Dorinthia.
the most important part with Dorinthia. I can't really speak to drafting, but I did play her for about a month and a half when I was first learning the game because it really helped me drill home how Go Again works, how to get it consistently, how to do proper stacking. Your sequencing, getting that nailed down is all really important. Especially
Mm.
when you got so many moving pieces. The ability is independent from Dawnblade, is independent from what happens when you cast your attack reactions. There's just so many moving pieces. It's kind of a really good way to train up at the game. And at the same time, it's pretty simple compared to like trying to learn, having your first hero be the wizard. If you're like, oh, I want something that's complex,
Yeah.
you don't need to start at a 12. But at the same time, it does allow for a lot of versatility and it does really make you think. So I did appreciate that. And something when I was in that period of time really honing in on Dorinthia was that half the deck only exists to give you Go Again. Go Again is so important. So the Warrior's Valor, the run through, all of these things, very, very important. And then you actually play with a majority just blue and red pitch. Your red pitch, you saving for the later half of the game when they don't have their equipment, because they're going to block with their equipment early on. And if you have enough defense reactions to play it this way, I found it very handy in Blitz to just attack. They block with equipment. Don't do anything about it. Arsenal a card that gives you Go Again. Draw another card and pass. You don't need in the beginning to always be getting that stack, if that makes
So
sense.
just that's a really good point, and I just want to go back and clarify it. So you're saying that at the beginning of the game, I could be swinging with Dawnblade and then using, I think, is it Sharpened Steel, the one that costs
Yep,
0 and gives +3 with Reprise? So I might not actually want to be playing that early game, and I might want to actually pitch it to swing with the Dawnblade so
exactly.
that I can set up my late game a little bit better.
Exactly. Yeah. And your reds, like you want the blues, so you want blues with Go Again, and you want blues because the 3 pitch is going to fuel your entire turn later. So you need
Mm.
less blues later. You need one blue in your hand to be able to swing
Ah,
Dawnblade and then hit for massive endgame swings. And you really want to make sure that, if you can, you're forcing your opponent into a spot where they're going to have to block with their equipment. Otherwise, you're just going to keep racking up counters. Especially if you've already got the Go Again, just swinging with the raw Dawnblade is totally a fine thing to do for the first couple of turns of the game. Because then, you get to a certain point where the only way they can prevent the damage is by blocking from hand.
mm.
So,
And in draft, not everybody is going to have a full set of equipment, and the
yeah,
equipment that they have is not going to be
top tier
of the
exactly.
highest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nobody's
yeah.
going to walk in wearing a fridge. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Bravo can still walk in wearing a fridge. He can still block for pretty easily with his equipment.
Hmm.
That's a mini fridge. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, bar fridge, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I feel like it's
Oh,
pretty.
Spar fridge. That brings us right to Bravo. You want Helm of Ice and Speak with Bravo, and you want a
Oh,
time snap potion.
oh, I love Bravo already. You know those are my cards.
The first Wraith draft that I ever did drafted Bravo, and it felt unfair at some points because I was able to draft multiple copies of Pummel, and
Hmm.
then because I had a decent amount of experience playing Bravo in Constructed as well, I knew
Hmm.
that I want to be grabbing as many blue Guardian attacks with Crush as possible because they pitch for 3, and a Nothos, the hammer that
Yep.
you start with as Bravo, can go in for 6 if there are 2 cards with cost 3 or greater in your pitch zone, and it
Hmm.
only costs 3 to attack. So fun play line if you only have if you have no other way to get eh. Fun play line, you pitch 1 blue to use Bravo's ability to give your next attack card with cost 3 or greater dominate, and then you pitch another blue to a Nothos and you just go in for 6. Because you can't tech plating
Yep.
before to get the second card and pitch. But yeah, if you're playing Bravo, you really want to focus on drafting your blues. And then I feel like I'm giving away my secrets. This is awful. And then drafting some good red attacks, like we're talking about. You want win cons. You want some ways to go in for more than 6 damage and just do some big swings.
Right.
Oh, no swing big in this set, though. Sorry, Reiner.
Tragic.
But Bravo's piece of equipment at common is the Helm of Eisenpeak. And it's really great because it has Battle Warren allowing you to block for 1,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on in the game use its ability, which is for 1 resource and an action point, you can gain 1 intellect this turn. So that will allow you to, if you arsenal a card, have a 6-card hand,
Mm-hmm.
and that can really help you make the difference between.
I just wanna make a quick point here.
Yeah.
If you have a couple of time snap potions in your deck, using
yeah.
the helm doesn't end your turn, which is
That's exactly
really good. Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah.
You want to get that Eisenpeak, you want to get that time snap so you can pull it out of your mini fridge when you need it. Just give it a little tip, and then you're going to be smarter than everybody else, at least for a turn. And you'll feel smarter than everybody else when you do it too, because it feels really good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so with Bravo, it seems like a pretty straightforward strategy. The difficulty doesn't seem like it's necessarily in the execution of playing him, but it sounds like it's really important that you draft in a way that's conducive to winning, because it sounds like it'd be pretty easy to draft a Bravo deck that has no way of either, having consistent turns, if it doesn't have enough expensive blues, having, consistent enough turns with your hammer to where you can do things every turn, and the other way around, it seems like, you could potentially go that direction so hard that you don't have big finishers. So kind of riding the line in the middle seems really important with his strategy in particular.
Yeah, some key cards for him I found are Pummel. I mean, that's a little bit obvious. Pummel is just an amazing card, and I should have mentioned it with Dorinthia and Katsu. Razor Reflex is the small attack, the cost 2 or less, or 1 or less, I think it is, and then Pummel is 2 or greater. The small equivalent to Pummel, and it can give something go again and a little attack boost, or just give your weapon a nice little attack boost. And that is excellent in both of them as well. I think Pummel is even better than that. And it fits perfectly into Bravo because you can just pummel one of your already large attacks to go in over the top for a little extra damage and then take away a card from them. And that disruptive mid-range gameplay is just so satisfying. The other card is Demolition Crew, and I think it attacks for, I think it's 6, it might be 5 for the red. I think it's 6, let me just check. And if you reveal a card with cost 2 or greater, going off the top of my head here, then it gains Dominate. So that's, again, trying to make sure that you have ways to finish out the game. And yeah, Demolition Crew, here we go, the red. As an additional cost to it, you can reveal a card from your hand with cost 2 or greater. And if... Oh yeah, so it is just an additional cost to it, and it has Dominate natively. So that can really just help you close out games. But Reinar, I have not drafted Reinar, but I know you have Hammer. You swing big. Grr. You have a lot of experience playing Reinar. So would you like to talk us a little bit through his basic game plan, ignoring fun stuff like scabs or other cards?
So yeah, just kind of trying to take this from I feel like we're going to a fancy restaurant here and I'm about to serve you deconstructed rice pilaf or something, like I'm gonna take out all the fun parts and I'm gonna leave you with, the rice. Looking at Reinar, I mean, the biggest benefit and my favorite thing about Reinar is that he's just full of block threes, which is so useful. So a lot of his
Oh,
strategy, if you like, having played now a myriad of different heroes, his blocking power is better than Guardian. It's some of the best that I've seen.
just to
Almost,
clarify, in Wraith, he doesn't have any of those cards that don't block.
yeah,
Because I
exactly.
know in Monarch, when we talk about Levio, we're going to have to address the fact that there are brute cards that just do not block,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that
100%.
freaking sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, we started getting introduced those for our like mainline brute for our Reinhardt players out there. In like Everfest, we have Wild Ride that doesn't block. You've got Swing with Big Tree as well, doesn't block. But those cards aren't really relevant here, right? Most of what you're looking at is like barraging beatdown. Your basic brute attacks, your intimidate cards, which could be your primeval bellow, etc., etc. So I mean, just to really boil it down, when I look at that, if you're playing Blitz Reinar without claws, like if you're going default club, which
Mm.
is going to be the case, all of the time when you're playing WTR, the main goal is to block, an ample amount of damage,
Mm.
and then most turns, all you're going to be doing is swinging for 4. You're going to be blocking more effectively than your opponent because brutes have very thick skin. They're very tough. So your strength is really in your ability to block more than it is in your power to attack. You're going to block consistently. You're going to look for your tempo windows where maybe you have an arsenal card in a full hand. They have a card in arsenal and 2 cards in hand. And then you have such an advantage at that point that all you need is to intimidate and they can't even block, right? It's all about trying to maintain that tempo. If you can draft Pummel, Pummel's amazing because all of your attacks are going to cost 2. It's going to trigger on every brute attack that you draft, pretty much.
Do you
The
feel the
only
same way about Barraging Beatdown?
barraging beatdown is very good. Is very good. It's very important. You should be drafting barraging beatdown. It blocks for 3. The pitch is good. Even on, the really key thing about barraging beatdown is the intimidate.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
really important because at a certain level, that intimidate guarantees you that the extra damage is going to hit. And at that point, like, it doesn't really matter if it's getting a +2 or a +3 or a +4. It makes a difference, obviously. Like, ideally, sure, you want to be playing the red and pitching the blue or playing the red and
Mm.
blocking with the blue. But I mean, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad about blocking with the red if you have to, because that blue is still going to be useful later. It's all about knowing your timing and knowing when to explode, watching the tempo, keeping track, and half your game is going to be spent blocking. So a lot of those cards, you might want to draft in excess. Barraging Beatdown is one of the most common rares that I've opened, and I've opened
Mhm.
1, 2, 3. I've opened like 5 boxes recently of Welcome to Wraith.
Yeah.
And I've seen more barraging beatdowns than anything else by probably about 25%. You're going to see a lot of them. It might seem kind of silly, but they're incredible. Just having that access to that intimidate in such a small format is really important. So you're going to be mostly blocking 3, creating windows, swinging for 4, get a couple of pummels if you can. Try to get those on hits so that you can manipulate your card draw. So you can manipulate the tempo and how many cards you have against your opponent. I meant to say card advantage.
Mm.
And that 4 damage, if they're only blocking 3 for every 4 swing, that leak of 1 is going to matter so much. Because in 10 turns of the game, if the game's over in 10 turns, and you've dealt 1 damage every turn, just to like scope it out, if you've dealt, that 1 damage every turn adds up to half their life total. So then you really only need 2 big swings and a club every turn. Like, the demand isn't that high. So it might seem a little complicated, but really in the end, I think it's just right down to manipulating the board state, playing it more like a control deck than playing it like an aggro deck, and then taking your opportunities to go tall and guarantee damage. No.
So something I'm curious about. I noticed with Katsu, we talked about wanting to draft zero cost blues
Mm-hmm.
or yellows, so
Mm-hmm.
you can pitch that for 2 Kodachi swings.
Mm-hmm.
With Bravo, we want to be drafting blue cards or other cards, but hopefully blue cards with cost 3 or greater,
Mm-hmm.
so we can trigger a Nothos.
Mm-hmm.
And for Reinar, so how much do you value drafting cards with power 6 or greater?
So actually, like, I don't put it very highly, but if you can, if you have the opportunity to take a yellow Smash Instinct, take that
Mhm.
every day of the week. That Intimidate strapped on it is really good, and if you discard it, the Intimidate is really good. But yeah, yellows are a priority as well, I should say, with Rhinar, because that club does cost 2. So if you can block with the cards from your hand, you can pitch the 2 to swing with the club and then
Mhm.
arsenal your other card. That's really important. And then those 2 pitch tend to also be very powerful cards for the end of the game. But, I mean, unless you have like a few Primeval Bellows, which necessitate discarding a card, I believe. There's one of the Bellows that you have to discard a card in addition to paying it, right?
Mhm.
If
Yep.
you're specking into that, that's all right. I mean, I just wouldn't recommend that as a draft strategy. Yeah, I think overall that's a little inherently risky. I don't have experience actually playing the draft, but I am a Rhinar player, so I'm trying to like kind of see what I
Mhm.
can parse out of this. But
So it sounds like the consistency of the card set, like the amount and threshold of discard cards and the specific ones that you would need to make a discard Reiner work in draft is a lot more prohibitive
yeah,
than just playing good stuff Reiner.
it's not going to happen. You want to play
Okay.
consistent good stuff Rhinar, and the great thing about consistent good stuff Rhinar is all you need is readily available commons and like 4 or 5 of the most printed rares in the set. Like it's
Mhm.
really pushed. And if nobody is playing it and you can just snipe all of those little picks here and there, right?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, it feels to me like it's probably a guarantee that you're going to do well. Um, and it's something that I think multiple people at a table can draft effectively as well, because those rares are so pushed and the commons, I mean, they're abundant, right? Everybody's going to be pulling them.
Mhm.
But yeah, for Rhinar, contrary to, you're going to play him a completely different way than you would in CC or in Blitz because you just don't have access to that overall strategy. You're really relying on his inherent ability to block damage and to swing with consistency. It might not look like it, but when you're playing Rhinar in that setting, he's more of a control deck than an aggro deck. Yeah.
No, that makes sense to me, but that's because you've been talking to me for a while about how like, man, if you just play Reiner as a control deck is just so much better. But no,
I
you
get shit for running club, but people don't understand. People don't get it.
it works. He's won enough games, at least against me, for me to say it works. Trust him.
But it's a hard strategy. Honestly, it is really difficult to learn where the openings are, to learn when you have the tempo, to figure out how to maintain the tempo once you have it.
Hmm.
It is a bit difficult, and it did take me a good bit of time. I could see that the deck was good, but I was bashing my head against the wall trying to figure out exactly how to make it work for a while as a new player, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Well, you
don't.
have to get your head around tricky things like how you mentioned pitching your red stuff earlier with Dorinthia. So
Mhm.
you'd get it later when the opponent has hopefully run out
Mhm.
or run through all of their defensive options.
Yeah.
That's not a really basic beginner way of thinking about the game. So I
Mhm.
could see how once you have made that a part of your game knowledge, your success with that control version of Rhinar would just go way up.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, don't underestimate the value of block 3.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate that. It's really important. And another thing is, most of the yellows that I include in those decks, like your Smash Instinct, I
Hmm.
mean, they're made to be pitched early. The whole point of them in that deck is to be pitched early. It pitches exactly for your club. I will block with everything else in hand, hold the Smash Instinct, pitch it to club, wait for later in the game, wait for that window opening, and then I don't even need the Bellow to get the Intimidate, you know?
Okay,
So
yeah.
if I can play a Barraging Beatdown into a yellow Smash Instinct, which has utility in
Oh,
the
that's
early game for
exactly.
activating
Yeah.
club, instantly you get the 2 Intimidates. If they, have 3 cards in hand or whatever the situation is, um, yeah, I mean,
Flashbacks. God, I'm just trying to KO, and then you quad intimidate me and hit me for my entire health total on turn one. Go fuck yourself.
sometimes it really do be like that.
It,
Sometimes, I mean, and Blood Rush Bellows is a card. That is an okay discard
what
card to
was that
get.
from Crucible?
No, no,
No?
no. Blood Rush
Oh
Bellow
yeah, no,
is from
you've
Welcome to
opened the
Wraith.
hell out of
I've
multiple
opened
those.
so many. It was so nice, when I got into Flesh and Blood, Chris bought me a playset, and then immediately after, I've opened 2 playsets. It's so
Yeah.
pushed. It's so pushed. Yeah, but it is really
So
good. So that's a card to be on the lookout for. That's kind of your chase card in Rhinar for those big swings at the end. Being able to draw the extra cards
mm,
is really big. And then I don't think Sand Sketch Plan's in this set. Is Sand Sketch Plan in Welcome to Wraith?
I
I'm
think
gonna
it is,
I'm gonna
and
look
it's
it up because
printed
I'm a
at
silly
super
goober.
rare, I think. Oh, and don't overlook Reckless Swing as a win con.
Oh my god, it's my favorite win con in the game. It's so good. Yeah, Welcome to Wraith.
Dumbass
Okay, so
go down to 2 health way too often because if you're playing against a brute, you got to play around Reckless Swing and just pretend you have 2 less health than you actually do
you really do.
because they can just come in with more or less unblockable damage to win on your turn. It kind of feels like playing against Wizard
Mm.
a little
And
bit.
a lot of the time, you can prime your hand to guarantee that. Like
Oh yeah,
even if I'm
get up
not
with the
gonna
stuff that, yeah.
even if I'm not gonna use the effect of a blood rush or rather of a barraging beatdown, a lot of the time I'll just play it to get out of my hand to guarantee I can deal the 2 damage at the end of the game. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So before we talk about Monarch now, I just want to go over some of the important cards of Welcome to Wraith to keep an eye out for. Those being at common, you really want your Sync Belows, your red Sync Belows, your red Scar for Scars, just because it's great value, it's generic. Pick them early to stay open. You want to grab your pummels, slogisms, and regurgitating slogs as they go around. Those will probably wheel once, so you can just pick them up and just know that you have a win con in the back there. Draft your equipment. You really want to do everything you can to go into the game with a full equipment loadout because just having that extra 4 health, if you just draft all Iron Rot, can easily make the difference between winning and losing because so many games go down to both people being in the low single digits. Yeah, stay open early, try and read the table, don't hate draft too much,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoy Welcome to Wraith drafts while you still can, because I know the supply of these early sets and their unlimited print runs is beginning to dwindle. I know that my LGS said that they're starting to run out of Arcane Rising, so
Mm-hmm.
pick it up, or you cannot get your Command and Conquers, get your Art of Wars.
It's true. It's really important. Also, WTR Unlimited, which has the Enlightened Strikes in it, is starting to sell out in a lot of places as well. The LGS that I frequent has 1 box remaining, which I'm probably gonna go. I'm probably gonna go buy. Um,
Do it.
yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
you find those good.
Oh, I know, I know. We might be. I might be popping on later tonight and doing a box opening stream. Um, depending on how the day goes. But yeah, they're at the online shop that I just bought a handful of boxes at, which we were looking at together there. Yeah, they had 10 boxes remaining. My LGS has one. Another LGS near me I think has 6 left. Like they're getting low, and nobody's really restocking on them because there isn't really any restock to be had. So definitely, I know unlimited seems like a guarantee that'll be around forever, but it won't. And it's important, these cards, once the print runs are done, the value of them if they are played is going to be pretty substantial. In the future, not necessarily. I can't say with any short term theory, but I look at it the same way that I looked at Magic. I have the utmost faith that this game is going to last. It's exploding right now, and it's been steadily exploding for the last 3 years.
Well, and the creator is a stand-up guy, and he seems to actually have faith. Not seems to. He actually has faith in the product that he's created, and he
No.
wants to make sure it's an enjoyable experience.
Mm-hmm.
He has the best intentions of the players at heart, as
Yeah.
opposed to Hasbro.
Yeah, as opposed to the fireside
I'll be
chat.
able to meet. Oh, yo, side note, did you hear about the Yu-Gi-Oh? I think it's either 25th or 30th anniversary product.
No.
So they're reprinting the first, I think, 2 or 3 sets.
Oh, that's cool.
So those are the ones that those are the packs that I got when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh when I was growing up, when I was
Mm-hmm.
like 5, 6, 7. So that's like Legend of Blue Eyes, Metal Raiders, and Pharaoh's Servant, I think.
Mm.
But they are printing them and selling them for regular pack MSRP, and they're not proxies. and they're going to
Wow.
be widely available.
Wow. Now that's a pro gamer move. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, hey, the gambling company does better than the company that's about making games. Love it.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, final note on that: Hasbro's about making money, not making games. Okay. All right. So D&D is
Love it.
undermonetized. Hasbro sucks. D undermonetized my ass. Anyway.
LSS doesn't suck. LSS is amazing.
Yeah.
And Monarch was when a lot of people really saw that and caught on to the game of Flesh and Blood.
It's true.
So it's going to be a really exciting set to draft, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have done one Monarch draft. I played Prism because I was just getting past really great Prism cards, even though I had a Prism next to me. I don't know how it happened. Uh, but Monarch draft is a little bit more complicated than Welcome to Wraith.
Mm-hmm.
You have more generics in the pool, kind of, with the light and shadow cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Wraith, you want to stay open early if you can, but it's so it's a different draft environment. The one deck that's really easy to build is Prism because her heralds are just really above rate, and the deck just kind of folds together super quick, super easy. The other decks can be just as good as Prism, like all of them at a high level can duke it out with each other and do great. But if you're playing suboptimal decks or didn't draft as well,
Mm-hmm.
Prism is just the easy. She's the five of the format. And before I get too far into this, I got a lot of this info from Arsenal Pass, their podcast, episode 5. So I would highly recommend checking that out and giving it
Mm-hmm.
a listen because they actually have a lot more experience with this. And I'm just going off a single draft, my personal experience, and then taking their anecdotes into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So would highly recommend that before I get too far into this.
Mm. I'm really curious to see when we do our stream next week how your opinions have changed or what you're thinking about the game. Um, I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, I mean, I went into this thinking Bolton absolute trash, never draft him, but they were saying that he can be actually super good if you can reach a certain threshold
Mm,
of cards.
mm,
So he's going to be wanting a lot of those charge cards.
mm-hmm.
Take Flight, Express Lightning. He's the hero that I have had the lead. I played my first Bolton game against Miles the other day. First time ever Bolton. I tried 2 games. I just didn't like it. So so I switched to something else. I think it was like Viscerai or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you need that threshold of cards so you can get everything into your soul. You don't necessarily want to be playing out as much damage as you can present with your hand every turn. You want to be it, it's a build up game plan.
Mm,
You're charging your soul so you can have access to Bolton's ability for big go wide turns. You ideally want to have some stuff like V for the Vanguard, Luminarch Ascension, some payoffs that
mm.
can really,
Drive you home.
yeah, huge damage spikes if you
Mm-hmm.
set up Celestial Cataclysm. That's a light majestic that can go in for 7 for 0 with go again if you banish 3 cards from your soul.
Mm-hmm.
All of those, if you can get a good combination of all of those cards,
Mm-hmm.
then you can have an absolutely oppressive, disgusting Bolton deck.
Yeah.
But when I went to do the Monarch draft that I did, the advice that was given to me by my buddy Avery was just don't draft Bolton. Prism's the easiest one.
Mm-hmm.
And that proved me well because I placed fairly well in it. Uh, Also, oh yeah, Gallantry Gold. You really want Gallantry Gold if you are playing Bolton because that handpiece can just net you tons of damage, and it's just great because you can block with it.
Mm. It's true.
Do you have anything to add to that? Because I don't have tons to say about Bolton, knowing that I don't know tons about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gave it a pretty good rundown there. Honestly, I don't know a lot about him either. I've played Warrior a little bit more, but his strategy is so different from the versions that I've played with Kasai and with Dorinthia that honestly, I don't myself have a lot of input. Yeah.
Shout out to Shannon from of Nerd Haven Games, because one of the first games, well, yeah, one of the first games I played at an armory I went to was against her Bolton with Raiden Duskbane, and that game was still so close, so down to the hair.
Mm,
Great flesh and blood memory. Thank you, Shannon.
mm,
So from Bolton, we'll go to the other light hero. That's Prism.
mm,
She's I feel like I don't even need to say much about her because she is just such an easy deck to build and to play.
mm,
I hit you with big thing goes into my soul. I spend 2 resources to essentially gain 1 life. It's amazing. The problem that she runs into is she doesn't have a traditional weapon like the rest of the heroes here do.
mm,
So in order to get that value without spending cards from deck, you need to find a way to have a spectral shield stick for at least like a turn. So
mm,
that might be pitching on your opponent end of your opponent's turn to make one, so you have it at the start of your turn, because then you can do something really disgusting, which is called use the weapon Iris of Reality to pitch a blue and just
mm.
go into the door.
Yeah.
And I friggin' love that card. I think it is an underutilized weapon,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can manage to get multiple spectral shields and to just swing with more than one a turn, you're just milling cards from them more or less and threatening an awkward number for
Mm,
every single swing.
mm,
And it's just incredible.
mm. That does sound insane. Yeah.
Dreamweaver's super valuable to have for Prism. If you're going to play her, you really want to prioritize grabbing those. Um, I don't have much more to say because she's really good. She's not tricky to draft,
Mm,
and it's all pretty straightforward there.
yeah. Sound.
Levia, a little bit less so. We talked about with some of the heroes like Katsu
Mm-hmm.
and Bravo earlier, having a win con and making sure that you've built some of those into your deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys at Arsenal Pass really hammered in that, especially with Levia, you need those ways to finish out the game.
Mm.
She's
Something
a little,
something that
yeah.
strikes me about this is that in MTG drafting, it's kind of the
Mm.
same way. Like you need to draft bombs, but with MTG drafting, it's really easy to see what the bombs are. Like your opponent's gonna
Uh,
know just as well as you. But with Flesh and Blood, and especially in a set like Monarch, and especially if you're building a more complex deck like Levia, your bomb, right, is gonna be a combination of cards played at the right time in a particular order. It's a little bit harder to grasp exactly what that finishing push is gonna be because it is more complex. Mm-hmm.
Really, that great way to put that. Really good observation.
Mm, thank you.
Because it's one of the win cons that I I forget if it was I forget their names, so I'm not going to try and use their names.
Mm,
But that they shared for Levia was having Minnowism plus Overload. So if you don't know, Minnowism gives the next card with, I think it's cost 0 or less, or it's base power 3 or less. And I
mm,
really want to get this. I think it's base power because it goes with Belittle. Yep, the next attack action card. The next attack card you play with cost 3 or less base power this turn gets +3 for
mm,
0 and go again.
mm.
And then Overload comes in for 3.
Yeah,
It
Overload's
has
great.
Dominate, and if it hits, it gets go again. So you can use those 2 cards
Hmm.
for. You can have a 2 card hand. Minnowism,
Nice.
Overload, boom.
That's the name.
Finish.
Holy man! Oh,
Yeah,
he did it. He actually did it. The madman actually did it. Round of applause.
thanks.
That does sound
And
incredibly powerful, though. All jokes aside, that does sound insane. Yeah.
no, really good.
Hmm.
Another win con you could potentially have is Outmuscle, because if they don't block it with something of equal or greater power, you can go again. And that means you could swing in with your weapon at worst, or potentially go in with something really big and brutish at best.
Hmm.
Maybe even something like a Riding Beast Hulk with
Hmm.
Dominate. That is a top tier rare that you want as Levia. It costs 2, goes in for 6, blocks 3. It has Blood Debt as an additional cost to play it. Banish 3 random cards from your graveyard. If you banish a card with 6 or power greater, 6 or greater power, this card gains Dominate. Um, it's great. 6, and then you have Dominate for 2. And the key piece of equipment for her is Hooves of the Shadow Beast.
Yeah.
If you get these, whenever you banish something with 6 or greater power, you have the option. It's a triggered ability, and you have the option to banish Hooves of the Shadow Beast. Or is it? I think it's banished, but it might be sent to grave. I just want to check because that is mildly important.
Yeah.
Or Levia. Yeah, destroy it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you can go in with another big attack, like perhaps outmuscle.
Right. It seems like they kind of adapted that into beaten trackers in Dynasty.
Yeah, totally. They made it non-shadow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Playable. They made it playable. Sorry.
Dude, Shadow Beast is so playable in Levia.
Yeah, but 25% of the time you play Levy against me, you die to yourself.
Yeah, but the other 25% of the time you beat me, and the other 50% of the time I win. Just kidding.
No, that's what we call a competitive win rate.
I tried, okay?
It's the effort, it's the, what is it? It's the thought that counts, right? Right?
Yeah.
No, it's winning. It's always winning. The only point is to win. Literally kill your opponent if that's what it takes. Anyway.
Mild spike, I know that. Okay, back to Levia though. She's not very spike, but she's so great. Love her. Dread Screamer functions essentially like Hooves of the Shadow Beast in card form, and if you want to be super disgusting, you can use Hooves of the Shadow Beast when you banish stuff with Dread Screamer. Dread Screamer costs 2, goes in for 6, blocks 3, has Blood Debt. Banish 3 random cards from graveyard when you play it, and when you hit a 6 or greater power, banishing the cards, it gets go again. So if you Dread Screamers get go again with it, and then banish Hooves of the Shadow Beast, you're left with 2 action points. So that's just more fun.
More disgusting plays to make, yeah.
Yeah, more Blasphemed Souls. And we love that. But Dread Screamer, it's also great because it costs 2, and that means you can pitch a blue, go in with Dread Screamer, and then go in with something that costs 1. That will do a bunch of damage. I'm thinking Graveling Growl, I think is the card. It costs 1. The red goes in for 7, blocks 3. It has Blood Debt, and you can only play it if you've banished a card with cost 6 or greater this turn. And overall, that would be threatening with just pitching a blue, attacking with Dread Screamer, and then Graveling Growl is threatening 13 damage, and that leaves you with 1 card in hand to Arsenal at the end of turn. So that being said, you do want to prioritize having cards with power 6 or greater in your deck. You want at least the Arsenal pass guys said you want at least 7. You don't want to focus on it at the cost of everything else, but you do want to have around 7 minimum.
Very valuable information. Yeah.
Also important, you don't just want, this might be kind of obvious if you played any Levia before, but you don't just want to be banishing the cards out of your grave right away and just going in, because if you build up that Blood Debt early and you cannot continually turn it off by having the cards in grave to banish, then you're going to kill yourself. No. And we don't let people kill themselves.
No, we don't like that.
No, we're not about that here.
No.
Hashtag no blue whale.
Hashtag nuke the whales. Anyway.
Hashtag go to the Faroe Islands and hunt the whales.
Yeah, I don't condone that either. Nuking them is okay. Hunting them is unethical.
You absolute madman. So that leaves us with Chain as the hero that we have not talked about yet. He can be super, super great. We know this because he has reached Living Legend in CC.
Now, it
Uh,
seems to me that he's kind of a risky. I mean, like creating those tokens seems pretty risky when you're playing a draft deck. It seems like a
oh,
direction that I would kind of instinctually avoid, personally, at a first glance.
I mean, I even want to kind of avoid it sometimes at a second glance. But no, I have played against, I know my buddy Avery has a really great, he plays a really good chain, and that was honestly quite frightening. And I know
Hmm.
he crushed me as Briar. I think we just kept jamming games
Hmm.
just so I could get some practice with the Briar deck, and I think he won like four or five, and I won maybe like one. But the Soul Shackles give and go again was really powerful because it allowed him to go wide. And
Hmm.
then one thing that you want to focus on when you're drafting chain, your win condition is kind of your arcane damage because it's super difficult to block in this set.
Hmm.
So you want to grab Seeds of Agony because you can also play that from Banished, which is excellent, as well as Arcanic Crackle and Vexing Malice.
Hmm.
Actually, was Vexing Malice from Arcane Rising? Or not Arcane Rising, Tales. I want to get that right. No, that was from Monarch as well.
Hmm.
Beautiful. So you want to, if you grab those things, then you're going to have some unblockable damage just built in.
Hmm.
Uh, and that also goes into how the soul shackles can be beneficial. If you want to draft things like Bounding Demigorgon,
Hmm.
Piercing Shadow Vice, Rift Bolt, or is
Hmm.
it Rifted Torment? But a lot of these attacks and non-attacks that you can play from the banished zone, yeah, Riftbind. Um, so that when you do have to mill cards with your soul shackles at the beginning of the turn, you're going to hit cards that are essentially they just get to exist in your hand.
Hmm.
But it is you're absolutely right. It is an inherently risky play style. I remember in the Monarch draft that I played, when I went against a chain, it was
Hmm.
super easy. I think I played against two chains, and in both games, I was able to just block them out
Hmm.
as Prism, and they fatigued themselves both times.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that would be my worst nightmare in trying to draft chain in a set like that for sure.
Mhm.
Hmm.
That being said, if you know that that is a risk for you, then you want to be minimally activating Soul Shackles
Hmm.
and using it when you need to go again to push the wider turns.
Hmm.
And know that it is okay to leave things in your banished zone with Blood Debt for a turn or two
Hmm.
if it will allow you to have a turn if it will allow you to have a big turn where you can push through the damage that you need to close out a game
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
to take the tempo.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, it
Because
is.
once you do have the tempo, it can be very oppressive because if I don't have to block and lose cards from my hand, then I have access to tons of resources. I'm banishing things from my deck with Soul Shackles, and then that's giving me an entirely separate hand. So I essentially could use
Hmm.
the hand as 12 resources and just play X cards, all from banished, to go in for ridiculous damage.
Hmm. Hmm. It does sound like it has some pretty viable, playability to it. That does, maybe I've been scoffing at it a little bit much. Yeah.
I mean, like the guys on Arsenal Pass said, all the decks are viable
Hmm.
at a high level of play,
Hmm.
meaning that you knew what you were doing when you drafted and you're playing them in an ideal manner.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that's awesome. And I feel like that's a really good breakdown. I mean, I, as somebody who doesn't really draft in Flesh and Blood, I feel like I've learned a lot through just listening to that. And I do personally feel a bit better prepared now and kind of more ready to go into a draft. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for being for me to share.
My pleasure. And thank you to our viewers here.
That'll be good.
Oh, yeah. I think this is a good time to transition into the Cool Kids Card Club.
Oh, that's
Oh
us.
yeah, that's us. I know, right? For the first time ever. Whoa, it's so weird.
So I have to say, I had to pick some cards from Monarch
Hmm.
today, and as usual, I have two categories here for our cool kids in their card club. The first is the cards that I actually want to be playing with because they are just great cards
Mm-hmm.
and underutilized. And then also art. I love the art of this
Mm-hmm.
game. So the two cards I picked, well, the main one is Out Muscle because I see it played less. And this, it costs three.
Yeah, I've got it up on the stream here. It costs 3.
Yeah,
It's a red here that I've got, so we pitch for 1.
you only want to play the red, of
Of
course.
course, of course. Then we've got the 6 attack
Mhm.
value, the 2 block value, and the text that reads, while Out Muscle isn't defended by a card with equal or greater power, it has Go Again. Mm-hmm.
And it functions similar to the other card I want to talk about here, Zealous Belting, which costs 2, goes in for 5, blocks 2, and if there's a card in your pitch zone with greater power, it gains Go Again.
Mm-hmm.
That one sees a lot more play because Guardians are a class, and they like to have things with high power, especially, blue pitch cards, maybe with Crush, that go in for 6 and, pitch for 3, like we
Mm-hmm.
kind of talked about wanting to draft. And you
Mm-hmm.
can play that and then go kind of wide with a deck that is not known for going wide.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with Outmuscle. But the thing about Outmuscle that makes it really great is that you don't need to be playing cards with any kind of, like, you don't care about the power of the cards in your pitch zone or any other thing like that when you're
Right.
playing it. If you're playing Outmuscle against Decano, it's always going to have Go Again,
Oh, yeah.
unless sideboarded in one Nourishing Emptiness that they're using to block. In
Right.
which case, you're happy that they're not going to be able to go in with a Nourishing Emptiness because you have 4 in all rune because you're smart.
Right. And this is where, like, some of the cards that are good in certain decks, I mean, kind of come into play here, but I mean, Levia being the character, the hero rather, that's going to have the easiest time turning off the Go Again, also is going to have to lose a really big priority card for her in order to block this and deny the Go Again. So, in a
Well,
lot of
she might
situations, I
be
just
able
see
to
this
block
as
it and do that.
sorry.
She might not even be able to block it and do that if
Mm,
that one card that has 6 power is also her way
yeah,
of turning off Blood Debt.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of the time, it seems like even in the decks that could block this, it's just a free 3 for 6 Go Again. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Very, very powerful choice. Very powerful choice. And definitely something I had not given enough attention to. This might see its way into some sideboarding for me. Because, as Reinar against some of the decks that I struggle with, some of the wider decks, I feel like this is huge. Uh,
Oh, against Lexi, that would be gross.
Against Lexi, it's gross. Against Briar, it would be really good. I feel like versus Dromai, it's also very good.
Mhm.
And it really gives you a lot of controllability. And getting that Go Again is really important. Plus, it has the 6 power, so it does trigger everything that gets rid of it. I think this is a serious contender for replacing Swing with Big Tree. I think this is a big contender for any deck that runs that because I have run it. I have run it. I seriously have run it.
Oh,
It's
oh, something we never touched on when we were talking about, we mildly touched on it, but really important to note, some of the brute cards, especially the ones that you want to be drafting in Monarch, like Swing with Big Tree, do not block. Remember that and swing with them. Don't try and hold them back to block,
mm,
because I've done that,
mm,
and you feel really dumb.
I wasn't even thinking about like within the context of draft. I was thinking within the context of CC because it does
Mhm.
block. It costs 1 more, but you run enough blues. It's not really a problem. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but that seems like something that I might be experimenting with a little bit.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Mm,
That sounds like excellent tech to push your deck a little bit further.
mm, mm.
And I know in terms now to the art card for the Cool Kids Card Club, I know I talked before about a card, but I'm changing it on the fly here.
Okay.
Uh, New Horizon. We've all seen it. It it is one of my favorite pieces of art in Flesh and Blood. If you
Oh yeah, I've got it up here. Yeah.
because you can tell that's probably Lexi, and I always appreciate it when you can see the card or
Mm,
see the characters in the cards.
mm.
But then just the quality of the art, like this is giving me big Rembrandt, kind of almost like some Vermeer vibes.
It really does have that kind of energy. Yeah.
just the tone or the tones used to paint the woman's skin
Mm.
just give it such a lifelike quality.
Mm-hmm.
But he also chose colors that give it a slight surreality, almost porcelain finish.
Mm-hmm. It does kind of look like you're seeing this in a dream, which I really appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah, and Aria is a very dreamy place, and
Mm-hmm.
because of the what was it in Aria? Was it the ancients or the I forget what they're called, but the energy just going wild and causing the actual country or land itself to start warping and changing
Mm-hmm.
rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it is a stunning piece of art, and I would highly recommend anybody just go on FabDB, bring up the card, and then you can just look at Mihail Spillhalfter and just look at his art portfolio for the game. I
Mm-hmm.
think he might be my favorite artist that I've encountered through Flesh and Blood.
Mm-hmm.
He also did the art of Minerva Thermus or Themis, all like incredible. Um, Channel the Bleak Expanse, Uvia, Dread Screamer,
Mm-hmm.
because that is an MVP. So yeah, the art in this game always just hits me right in the feels, and I can't wait to see more, especially with Outsiders releasing.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be great.
100%.
Do you have any cards for the club today, sir?
I don't have any cards for the club today. We're running a little bit long, and so I hadn't prepared any. I hadn't prepared any, honestly. I'm gonna leave this most of the time to you as I'm learning here, and then once I'm kind of on the level, I'll start throwing in more things. But for me with the Cool Kids Card Club, it's mostly gonna be just throwing in weird one-offs here and there, things that you might not expect to be good. I will say, I have been a big fan of art for a long time in games. Flesh and Blood is something that the art of which I haven't really gotten into. The only Magic card that I still own is this guy right here, this slabbed up Rob Alexander signed Hollowed Fountain, the original art. It sits here in front of my desk
I love it.
every day. It's one of the first things I see when I wake up, and it's just something that it really is. I come and I sit down on my computer and I start working
Uh,
on.
I wake up every morning, I look at my hollowed fountain, and I think, God, I'm a lucky man. And
Yeah.
then I turn and look at my girlfriend, and then I get out of bed. That's you. I don't hear this laugh often, so it's making me deeply happy. The last time I heard a laugh that great, I think, was when Chad played his Construct Nitro Mechanoid for the first time. That's still one.
How did you know? How did you know? I feel like that picture, that meme of like a Wolverine laying down on his bed caressing a picture of Wolverine. Like, I feel, yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But definitely, I'm going to be looking into the art more often. And on our next week, I'll have some art to highlight for us. Yeah.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Well, I feel like that's a pretty natural place to wrap it out for the podcast. We might take a little break here. I might come back in a little bit. We might play some games depending on how things go. I might go and nab that box, and then run from there. Yeah. But thank you everybody so much for tuning in. It means the world. You can watch on Saturdays. We start streaming at 11 o'clock in the morning, 11 a.m. PST every Saturday. Generally, we're running for, between an hour and a half. And then all of these videos are uploaded right to YouTube on Sundays at about the same time. I'll try to get them out early enough that, if we're doing draft guides in the next few weeks, you guys will get the opportunity to look at those guides before your draft happens and kind of get a lay of the land if you need that. But yeah, for the purposes of YouTube, hey, like, subscribe, throw us a comment, please. It makes a huge difference. My name's Miles, signing off for Two Card Hand.
Chris here. Shout out to Nerd Haven Games, and we are out.
Peace.